To advise you that this meeting is being live streamed. This is a physical meeting taking place at the town hall, and as I said, it will be live streamed. I want to just advise you that the decisions that we make will be uploaded on the council website, and I'm going to hand over to Andrew to read out the protocol for participation.
Good evening, everyone. Just a reminder to only speak when invited to by the chair. All participating members are to keep their camera on during the proceedings unless they are having connection issues. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Please ensure officers remotely attending that your mics are muted when you are not speaking. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, refer to the page or paragraph number. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting, and I'll pass the note on to the chair. Please do not use the chat function for putting any formal questions to the Cabinet or making any other comments, and any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Just important to also say that joining remotely this evening will be Mayor Glanville, Councillors Kennedy, Coburn, Maxwell and Moyima. Also, just to remind colleagues that if you are joining remotely, that you cannot participate in the decision making. However, there is opportunity, if you so wish, when you indicate to in the conversation around the meeting. On that note, I would like to extend my condolences to the family of Rupert Tyson, and I would like to hand over to Mayor Glanville to make a contribute to him and his family.
Thanks, Chair, and I'm really sorry that I can't be there this evening. As you said, we're sadly marking the passing of Rupert Tyson. He passed away earlier this month at the age of 87. I'm sure many of us knew him. He was a stalwart of the community for many years, an anti-racism campaigner, former chair of Hackney Homes, and more recently, former chair of Health Watch Hackney. He was born in 1937 in Trinidad and Tobago, moving to the UK in the 1960s, aged 26, and was, as I'm sure all of us knew, a keen cricketer and someone that followed cricket through all of his professional roles here in Hackney. He was a real advocate for tackling inequality, and I know that in the past also worked on the Race Relations Board in Hackney and advocated for vulnerable residents. He actually worked for Housing Services before taking on the role as chair of Hackney Homes in the 1980s, and was, as I say, intrinsic in that early period of Hackney Homes' development as chair from 2006 until Hackney Homes came back into the council in 2016. And I know how deeply his loss is being felt amongst Hackney Housing Services staff, as well as his family and friends. I felt he gave the organisation a real personality, energy and drive, putting in place really strong governance, and was a very visible representation of Hackney Homes alongside the late Alice Burke, who we obviously lost earlier this year. He would always invite me into his office in Christopher Addison House for a quick coffee or to discuss what was happening in Hackney Homes when I was cabinet member. And was really a crucial part of being a visible advocate for tenants, leaseholders, and of course staff. I think what gave him an immense amount of strength was his physical presence. He had a very booming voice, one of the hardest handshakes, I think, of anyone in public life in Hackney. But he was equally at home representing the borough at conferences with government ministers, as he was engaging with tenants and local politicians. And I think that was one of his strengths. And Hackney Homes' legacy of delivering the Decent Homes programme is very much something that I associate with him. I know that he also spoke at full council and at cabinet chair. So this would be the type of meeting he would have come to talk about issues of concern and also to present items around Hackney Homes. I know in the past. He was also, I think you know, Chair, a Labour activist and a member in your own ward in London Fields, and a very active person there. He was recognised by the Queen with an MBE in 2011 for his contribution to housing. And I'm sure that all of us tonight would want to pass on our condolences to his daughter Mel. I've written to her this afternoon, and also those that are involved in preparing for his funeral on the 16th of December. I think I'll just read out a quote from him when he stood down as chair of Health Watch due to ill health, and I think it captures, in Rupert's own words, how he views some of the biggest issues that the borough faces. It's been an honour to contribute to making sure residents' voices are really heard by those running health and care services. It's important all services involve residents in their decision making transparently and from the start. This pandemic clearly exposes the injustices of our society. These can only be tackled if people trust those who run things to work more openly with them to end this inequality. And I think he brought that both to Health Watch and Hackney Homes, and will be greatly missed by us all. I did just want to, Chair, just to go on to talk about a couple of other issues. One, I think another tragedy was the loss of the 27 refugees in the English Channel last week. It was very much on our minds as we gathered last night for the Hanukkah lighting the menorah in Town Hall Square. I know you were there, Deputy Mayor Bramble, and many councillor colleagues were there. But Rabbi Gluck, I think, brought home very vividly the spirit of Hanukkah, about the idea of being a light in the darkness. And I think that refugee story and the story of Hackney being a place of sanctuary and solidarity with refugees. And it was a very moving ceremony, and also fun with the Sun and Marks Primary School Choir. But I think Rabbi Gluck put it very well, that every single human being, whoever she or he may be, is a candle of God who can be illuminated and warmed up. However difficult things might seem, we can bring light and warmth into society, into the world, and make it a better place. And I'd just come before that meeting from the fundraiser in de Beauvoir for the Community Settlement Scheme for Refugees. The de Beauvoir welcomes refugees, and I think that strong link between community activism, the meaning of Hanukkah, and one of our key civic leaders, I think, was very powerfully made. And I hope that out of this tragedy we can continue to redouble our efforts from a Hackney point of view to make refugees welcome. And I know that Councillor Williams is working on that around the settlement of our first Afghan families. But the right to safe passage to claim asylum is incredibly important, I think, to us here in Hackney, and something that we emphasised all the way through our work, not just with Afghan refugees, but Syrian refugees before that. And I extend our hope on all of our behalves, our sincere condolences to the family and friends that lost loved ones last week. And I know, particularly for the Kurdish communities of North London, that the stories that have started to emerge will be particularly harrowing. One of the reasons I'm not with you this evening is to be ultra cautious, given the rise in COVID cases. I'm nursing a cold, but have taken a PCR test to make sure that that is all it is. I've been taking regular lateral flow tests, but I think all of us will have seen the government announcements over the weekend. The council's communicated the core messages around that today. The Omicron variant will obviously worry us, just as the Delta variant did before that. And I would urge everyone to continue the very best of behaviours around hands, face and space and air, but also those additional guidelines that will be coming in tomorrow around mask wearing in shops and on public transport. It's absolutely vital that we take these measures seriously. COVID had never gone away, and I thank colleagues in Hackney, both on the officer and the member side, for really supporting that idea. We've not been a place that have moved forward and opened up unnecessarily, while obviously supporting our communities and businesses to return to a degree of normality. But we must redouble our efforts as we go into these deeper winter months, and obviously track the variant. So if you do have symptoms, please do test. please do take a PCR test if you require one. It's absolutely vital that people follow the guidance. And I suppose most importantly, given the congratulations that we took part in on Saturday around vaccine volunteers, is just how important the booster rollout is to our borough. And we have been doing sterling work, I know, to ensure that people that are eligible get access. I know our test centres and our vaccine centres are busier than they were. But if you do get the opportunity, and if the government does bring forward for all adults the vaccine booster, please do take up that opportunity. And there are still far too many people in Hackney that haven't had their first or second vaccines. And so I know that everyone will be redoubling their efforts around that to keep Hackney safe and limit the spread of the virus. My final comment, Chair, is just to thank everybody that has been a part of that effort, from the council, from the Hackney VaxPack volunteers, to my colleagues on the council, and obviously the NHS that are dealing with so much at the moment. And that's in every area of the NHS, continuing services as well as the immediate COVID response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. And just to reiterate some of the points you made, I know that Councillor Woodley and Palace and Vajana Thomas and Ete did join us yesterday, and just pipping Councillor Herbeig up to the post with the children that were singing so beautifully. But one thing that struck me from his speech was a talk about Hackney's diversity and strength and bringing people together, and we must remember that in time. And yes, given where we are with COVID, it's really important that we continue to make those measures, take those measures. And just to thank all of the members in this room that volunteer at the vaccination centres, and thank you in advance, because I know many more of us will do shifts, and the importance of the work that we do around refugees. Councillor Williams and I were literally in a virtual room earlier today discussing such matters. So I want to thank Councillor Williams on the work that she is leading on. So thank you, Mayor Glanville, for your introduction and the very passionate tribute you gave on Rupert. I'm now going to move on to the first item on the agenda. I've received apologies from Councillor Mackenzie. I've received no further apologies for absence, but just want to reiterate that Mayor Glanville, Councillors Kennedy, Coburn, Maxwell and Moima are joining virtually. Item 2 on the agenda, I've been notified of no urgent business. Item 3, do members have any declarations of interest?
No.
None, thank you. On to item 4, notice of intention to discuss business in private and any representations received and response to such representation. I've had none. Item 5, to consider any deputations, questions or petitions to the Cabinet by Council Bonton Officer. I've received none. On to item 6, to consider the unrestricted minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 18th of October. Do members have any queries or comments on the minutes? Can I ask members to then approve the unrestricted minutes? Thank you. Moving on to item 7 on the agenda, the capital update report. Can I hand over to Mayor Glanville to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Broadly, as set out, I just did want to highlight some of the investment that we are, that I'm asking the people in the room to approve. Obviously, I can't be part of the formal approval process. One, we know that our Southeast Asian and East Asian communities have been through a huge amount during the pandemic. Colleagues will have been aware of the initial racism that so many of those communities faced when people associated coronavirus with those communities, and that was a vivid feature of a lot of our community engagement last year, but actually it has flowed through to this year. We also saw the disproportionate impact of COVID on some of those communities, and some really harrowing feedback from our Filipino community about the challenges of working at the front line in health and social care, and not just having no PPE, but no PPE that fitted, and actually the disproportionate impact there. So And more recently, we've obviously seen the plight and the struggle of democracy campaigners from Hong Kong, who have also connected with our Hong Konger community in Hackney. And I know Assembly Member and Councillor Sam Marimo and myself and Councillor Jana Thomas and the Speaker were at some events with Hackney Chinese earlier in the year, and they brought to life all of these struggles. So I'm just really pleased that in this report, we're bringing together our own investment with that of the Mayor of London's Good Growth Funding to restore the MVET building on Englefield Road and bring it to life as a new hub for our diverse Southeast Asian and East Asian communities. It will make sure that the legacy of that building, not just for the Vietnamese community, but much more widely, those other diverse communities will be felt. We will save a much loved community building and hopefully allow it to flourish and support future generations of those communities. It also sits alongside the work that we're doing to safeguard the Vietnamese Hackney archive, which was damaged when the building was squatted a couple of years ago. And I hope that through this investment, we'll be able to bring to life that community hub to help tackle that inequality, to rebuild a more inclusive economy, and as I say, help those communities recover and thrive after this pandemic. There were also some perhaps slightly more niche pieces of investment under my introduction on 1.4. I'm really pleased, I'm sure Councillor Woodley would join me in being pleased around some of the innovative new equipment our Parks and Green Spaces teams will get through this, including, I think, electrically powered leaf blowers. I know that's been a quite controversial area of activity as we've moved into the autumn and winter. And you'll also see formal noting of the work around the Murray Lloyd Centre and wider investment in our infrastructure, including the work in Kings Park moving together. Beyond that, Chair, I can pen the rest of the report as set out.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Do members have any questions or contribution? Councillor Woodley?
Yes, just to thank the Mayor for highlighting that sort of modest item at 9.4.1. There have certainly been some feedback, I guess, around the petrol leaf blowers, and we are looking to kind of phase those out, but also have the opportunity to trial out an electric tricycle, the toolbox, to try and sort of upgrade and make more environmentally friendly some of our vehicles that we use to kind of move between our sort of parks and green spaces. So thank you for flagging that. I'm really pleased to see it in the chapter report.
Deputy Mayor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Just to really just place on record, if I may, the contribution from the Section 106 distribution of around £500,000 worth of highways works. And of course, it's always nice to see Section 106 being spent, perhaps not always on highways, perhaps other things as well. But this month, over very nearly £500,000 worth of investment made from planning gain into the borough's highways and public thoroughfares. And I think just worth noting for the record that that investment that is being made continues apace, and it is directly as a result from the redistribution of planning gain receipts that the council has received from new development happening in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Can I ask Councillor Maxwell and the Mayor to then make a comment?
Thank you. I'm just wanted to highlight, I'm really pleased to see the Murray Lloyd Centre in there, as Mayor Glanville mentioned, which is very much a key part of the Aging Well strategy. And I think one of the really positive things about this is it's not just one group using the centre, but it will be a hub for a number of groups. It will increase the partnership working across a lot of our voluntary sector groups supporting older people. And also a very key part of it is they're very keen to do intergenerational work, involve younger people, children in the work there. So I think it's going to be a very positive addition to our Aging Well work.
Mayor Glanville, do come straight in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for my Cabinet colleagues for the opportunity to come back in off your contributions. I really would like to echo what Deputy Mayor Nicholson said. All too often people ask the question, where does the development gain go in the borough? And I think what we're clearly seeing in this report, as we regularly do, but I think it's absolutely right to highlight it through Section 106 and more broadly still, the investment that we gain from development and how we deploy that in a way that links to not just the council's priorities, but our residents' priorities. It would have been remiss of me, and apologies for not saying this at the start, Chair, not just to thank finance colleagues for this report, but because so many of the items link into corporate property. A huge amount of work goes into both to projects like the Murray Lloyd Centre and the Ambiette building on Englefield Road. These are not easy schemes to hold the ring on, to make sure that we can leverage in external funding, work with our diverse communities, and ensure that those buildings can flourish for the needs of our communities. And it really does just highlight, and I saw Councillor Kennedy nodding, just the contribution that our voluntary sector estate buildings make to the borough, but also the cost of maintaining and investing in them. Every time we bring forward a building to expand our provision, to modernise that provision and engage with our diverse communities, it is hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of council investment that unlocks those buildings for these communities and for the types of things and activities we want to see there. And I just think it's worth really soberly reflecting on that. Very often people come to council and cabinet criticising us for property decisions and saying that we're not investing in the diversity of our borough, both economically and socially. And I think very visibly tonight, we're showing the exact reverse of that and the contribution that those buildings make to the civic life of our borough.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I do welcome this investment. I was just reflecting on when you were speaking and thinking about Hackney's response to the pandemic through lockdown, and a big part of what we were able to do as a borough was in partnership with our diverse communities, whether they were individual activists, whether it was people volunteering, whether it was organisations. All of that was possible, and all of what we did was possible because of our diverse communities, and any opportunity we have as a council to invest in those communities, to invest in properties, to unlock all the work that those communities do. We continue to do that and want to thank officers and members for all of the hard work that has got us to this opportunity to be able to welcome this papers. Can I now ask members to agree the recommendations? Thank you. We will move on to item 8 on the agenda, the overall financial position. Can I ask Councillor Chapman to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bramble. While it's disappointing to report that we are still predicting a revenue deficit in this year of 4.76 million, I am pleased to say that this is a notable improvement on our last report, and it's now something 2.5 million better because of the actions that have been taken, which are summarised in 2.8 of the report. I think the takeaway from this report is just that obviously we are continue to be in a tight financial position this year, and I would just stress to colleagues and chief officers the necessity of continuing to bear down on costs so that we keep this issue contained. So I commend the report, which just to ask you to note it, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any questions or contributions? I can't see anyone indicating. Just to reflect on the fact that you talked about the deficit, but the 2.5 million that we're in a better place. I want to thank you, Councillor Chapman, and officers and members working to do all we can to ensure that the budget is well fit for purpose. But moreover, I just want to set the context of local government losing 60p in every pound. So when we're trying to respond to the needs of our residents, when we're trying to make those fiscal and sound contributions to deliver our residents, to ensure that all of our residents, whether they are young, getting the best start in life, or there are our older residents, and the work that Councillor McAfee was doing about the Aging Well strategy is in the context of losing 60p in every pound, which is more than half of our budget. And I want to commend everyone in the council, members and officers, for the work that they're doing, because we're still trying to deliver our very, very best. Can I ask members to agree the recommendations? Thank you. We'll move on to item 9, Stanford Hill Area Action Plan. Can I hand over to Deputy Mayor Nicholson to introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And the report before us is asking us to approve the draft Stanford Hill Area Action. Sorry, I'll take my mask off. I thought it was a bit difficult to speak. And I realise why. Sorry, Chair. I'll start again. The report before us is seeking approval for the draft Stanford Hill Area Action Plan to go forward for a fairly extensive community consultation. So we're not being asked to approve the area plan or formally adopt the area plan in any sense, but to send out this worked up document through to the wider community for consultation over the course of December and through to the end of January of next year. I think rather than sort of take through every single kind of element of detail that is set out in this report, it is quite thorough, and it looks at the neighbourhood as a whole and all of the various elements of that neighbourhood. Yes, it focuses in on homes and the supply of new homes and living spaces. It also looks at the wider environment. It looks at transportation, mobility and permeability. It looks at educational and community infrastructure requirements and needs going forward. It is a very, very broad portfolio that is looked at in this piece of planning policy. But there is also, I think, just to place on record, Chair, if I may, a set of thanks. This plan, to get it to this stage, has been in the making for over 5 years now. It has been a long, long journey, and the journey is by no means finished as yet, and probably won't be until next summer. But thanks at this stage really must go to all of the local councillors, both Labour and Conservative councillors who have contributed to the making of this plan, and it must also be placed on record appreciation and thanks, both from myself as a lead member, but also I speak on behalf of officers as well, for the leadership, for the guidance, and for the direction of travel that member colleagues have shared with all of us involved in getting the plan this far. But there is also a great deal of thanks to be tabled for the community panel and all of those residents and representatives of organisations, faith organisations, as well as voluntary and community sector organisations, alongside councillors who have contributed again, to this process of plan and policy making for Stanford Hill neighbourhood. Suffice it to say that I've always said this, and I will continue to say it. I do believe that what we have here is a very progressive piece of planning policy. It is focused on the lives of people, the homes that they live in, and the neighbourhood in which they live. Often we talk about area plans, Chair, in the context of growth areas where we're talking about business and commerce and an economy that is growing and demands on transportation and logistics. And it's that kind of intense development pressure that drives an area plan. This is very different. This is an area plan where people live, and it's homes and it's residential neighbourhoods. And that's what makes this a very, very special area plan. It also makes it a very challenging one, because clearly there are many different views as to what this living neighbourhood could look like and should look like. And balancing all of these various interests and demands is clearly no mean feat. And that just brings me back to kind of repeat my thanks to both councillors and to residents and organisations in the area who have helped get us this far. The report is as set out, and I commend it to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Do colleagues have any questions or queries? No, I just want to welcome this thoughtful piece of work, Deputy Mayor Nicholson, and thank you for your leadership on this, and the officers, and of course the community engagement that has happened. Can I ask colleagues to agree the recommendations? Thank you. We will now move on to item 10 on the agenda, the review of South Shoreditch Conservation Area. Handing back to you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. And from the north of the borough, from the very, very north of the borough to the very, very south of the borough, and a very different neighbourhood. I think we all appreciate the importance of Shoreditch. It not only has an incredibly important local role, but it has an extraordinarily important role nationally, within the national economy, and indeed within the global economy. It is a truly extraordinary success story for Hackney, for its residents, and for all of those working in that part of our borough. Chair, it is an area that sits at the eastern end of what's called the Central Activities Zone for London, Central London's economy. And the Central Activities Zone itself has obviously been buffeted quite significantly by the events of the last 2 years. It is still standing though, and I have to say that Shoreditch itself is still standing, and it is extraordinary, quite the levels of investment that are coming through still, even as we end up into this period of reopening and recovery. There is certainly no kind of sort of relaxation when it comes to the levels of investment, the levels of interest in development, and this continued development pressure coming into Shoreditch as a neighbourhood. The conservation area has been there now for many years, in the middle of this extraordinary district. And it has proven to be a profound influence on the way in which Shoreditch has developed. It has been the main instigator in the character of Shoreditch. In other words, it's why many thousands of visitors have been and are beginning to come back to the area. It is responsible for delivering something quite unique that is not seen elsewhere, either in London or indeed elsewhere in the country. When you overlay that with our inclusive economy objectives, this is a piece of work that sits really at the heart of our administration's agenda and the Mayor's very clear objectives around an inclusive borough. All of this comes together. This South Shoreditch Conservation Area is being tabled this evening for adoption. It has been fully reviewed. It has been out to consultation, and indeed there have been many responses that have come back, some from landowners, others from interested residents, all of which have been addressed. And these minor adjustments have been made to the plan that's before us this evening, which involve boundary changes, and not significant ones, but just enough to respect the integrity of what has happened within that South Shoreditch Conservation Area that was originally in place. The report is as set out, and I commend it to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Mayor Glanville.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. I just wanted to emphasise just how welcome our continuing commitment to the conservation area in South Shoreditch is. As a former Shoreditch councillor, I know that this is an incredibly important set of safeguards for the heritage assets and the area south of Old Street. I note reference in the report to the future of Shoreditch Area Action Plan, and just to say, you know, again, that's a really important document I know is being developed but I think some of the really innovative architecture that incorporates the very best of the local area's heritage assets through the conservation area and still managing growth in an inclusive way, as you've set out, is because of the strength of this work over many, many years. And just to commend you for your work on it and the officers. I think there's been some reference to some of the warehouses that have been brought back into use, because I think the strength of our planning policies highlighted by the Chair of Planning. I did just want to make reference, though, in the opening introduction, just that the Mayor's manifesto runs from 2018 to 2022, not 2019 to 2022. So I wonder if that can be changed in the final version of the paper that gets taken through. I think that's just an admin error that may have got lost in the continuity of the document.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. And it's, you know, Councillor Deputy Mayor Mickelson, you talked about the much needed and important work in the north and then reflected on the south. And one of the things that you said that stood out to me was talking about the inclusive economy, and just highlights the importance of the work that we sit here to do, to agree, to interrogate and to discuss, because actually what we're doing is ensuring how we make our borough an inclusive economy, whether that's through business, whether it's around the communities that we live in. And actually all of that work feeds into it and is vitally important. So I just want to commend the work that you and officers and colleagues where portfolios crossover are doing. I'd like to ask colleagues to agree the recommendations. Thank you. I will now move on to item 11, the Gambling Act of 2005, Statements of Principles. Can I hand over to Councillor Vajana Thomas to introduce?
Thank you, Chair. This, the report before Cabinet provides the relevant information on the Gambling Act 2005 or Hackney Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Principles. Under the Gambling Act, we are required by law to publish statement of principles once in every 3 years. So this is the new Gambling Act statement for the borough. Or can I just say to colleagues that this report, it is recommending asking Cabinet to recommend to full council decision to approve the Gambling Act is not an executive decision, so it's for the full council to approve the gambling statement of principle of Hackney. As required by law, we have consulted the consultation report and the draft or statement are both attached as appendix. So colleagues, I commend the report to Cabinet to recommend to full council. Thank you.
So before I take questions or comments, I just want to advise there's been amendment to the recommendation. A document titled Proposed Amendments is available in your agenda pack, and the amendment of the text will by magic appear on screen, which it does above me. That's my Blue Peter moment that I prepared earlier. Do colleagues have any questions or comments? Can I then ask Cabinet to agree the recommendations? Moving on to item 12, going back to Councillor Vajana Thomas on the resolution not to issue casino premises licence. Councillor Vajana Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to the previous report, Chair, this is since 2006, Hackney has made the decision not to issue casino licenses in the borough, given the characteristics of the borough. Again, by law, we are required to publish our statement every 3 years. So this is a renewed statement of the current decision that Hackney would not issue casino licenses in the borough, given the characteristics of the borough. Also, this is not an executive decision. what the report is asking Cabinet to do is to recommend to full council for approval. Thanks, colleague. I commend the report.
Before I ask members to agree the recommendations, can I just point out that there has been an amendment to the recommendations and that will appear on the screen. Do members have any queries or comments? No? If on that note, then can I ask you to agree the recommendations? Okay, we're going to move swiftly on to item 3. So I'm going to speak to myself and ask myself to introduce this next item. It's for the governors at First Scholastic Catholic Primary School to appoint Davina, Berger Primary School to John. I do not know them to the extent of my knowledge, any professional or personal capacity. Do members have any queries or comments? I'd like to take this time as ever to thank our governors for the tireless work that they do. The Mayor and I just this earlier on last week were at a secondary school with the official launch and opening of the school, and we're speaking to the Chair of Governors, and the amount of work that they do and dedicated to our community has to be recommended, especially as they work tirelessly in the time as we transition into keeping schools open and all that they do. Will members like to agree the report? Thank you. Moving on to item 14, any other restricted business to consider? I've not been notified. Item 15, dates of the future meetings. And although it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, we do have a meeting in December, so I will leave my Christmas wishes from then. As the Mayor did, though, highlight that we were outside on the Town Hall steps, so would want to wish all of those who celebrate Hanukkah a happy Hanukkah, and we did symbolise the lighting of the memorial candle. So on that note, if I don't have any other indications, if you look on item 15, you see the forthcoming meetings for Cabinet. And on that note, I would like to end the meeting and thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.